Warren, we want to get right into what we're talking about here. I mean, you mentioned that you have been doing some new and innovative things with worship, with your choir concerts, and that's led to some discovery. So jump in wherever you want and tell us about some of this.
Yeah, well, when I took the reins, I'm only the third choir director in the 53-year history of Judson University, so it goes back a long ways. And I'm a Judson alum, so I sang for the first and founding director, Ed Thompson, and Dale Velker took the reins after Ed, and now it's me. And one of the things that when we created this whole Center for Worship in the Performing Arts back in 2012, and then the Demoss family graciously endowed a lot of what we're doing, so we're now the Demoss Center. The idea was that we should infuse every aspect of what would be normally a traditional music or worship arts education. We should infuse everything through the lens of what Paul tells us in Romans 12:1, that everything that we do is our spiritual act of worship. And so that means that our piano students down in the practice rooms grinding away on their scales, they should be looking at that as if it is their worship to God. And our theater students, when they're memorizing their lines, they're not doing it just so that they won't screw up when it's time to open the curtain. They're doing it as an act of worship to God who gave them those theatrical gifts. And so how that's translated in our concert choir ministry is that we really have radically transformed the whole experience, and from the get-go. So most college choirs, in fact, when I was in the Judson, we were a college back then, Judson College Choir, we would spend 15 minutes before the concert figuring out, okay, how we're going to line up. We're going to march in this way 2 by 2 as if we're going up to the ark, and you're going to turn left here, and you're going to turn right there. And there's nothing inherently evil about that. But we have done, since I took over the choir, we have the students get in the back in the narthex, and then on my signal, they just go in and they spread themselves out and they simply shake the hands of the people who have come there. And it breaks the ice immediately. It puts the congregation in a great frame of mind to see these young, freshly scrubbed college students actually pressing the flesh, reaching out and thanking someone, shaking their hands and smiling at them, and the whole thing. It just breaks the ice, and the change is immediate. So that's one thing. And then in the context of the concert itself, we've really made it a point to kind of upend the usual. And again, God works He works with traditional choirs and all the other Christian schools out there who don't do this. I'm not saying for a second that their ministries are invalid, but for what we felt that we needed to do was to turn these concerts into worship services so that we're not performers, we are worship facilitators. And that really takes shape in two significant ways. The first is that about 1/4 to 1/3 of our entire program is congregational. In other words, I will turn around and I will lead the congregation, and the choir behind me will sing. We're all singing together, and we are lifting up our corporate worship to the Lord. It involves the congregation. It keeps them from being passive consumers, and it gets them engaged in the experience. And then, and we have a narrative ebb and flow. This year, we're singing through sayings of Christ. It's kind of like we're the red letter choir this year. Everything that we do is related to something that Christ spoke in the Gospels. Last year, we looked at the Lord's Prayer and sang through that. The year before that, we looked through the Psalms, and everything was based off of a psalm. So it gives it some narrative ebb and flow. And then the other thing, John, is we've really expanded our repertoire. It used to be, when you CCM pioneers were out there, if you brought a drum set into the church back then, it was a cause for great emotion and debate. Now, if you don't have a drum set in a church, you're deemed irrelevant to the culture. So we bring in a full praise band with bass, guitar, keyboard, brass, and yet we also do 2 or 3 songs with a chamber orchestra of flute, violin, oboe, cello, and just the whole thing. And it has just radically transformed our concerts, and the responses that we've gotten from congregations has been fabulous.